Bitcoin mining is going to like settle down into the cracks of these utility applications where it's doing something at an energy level. It is helping balance the grid. It is turning excess solar into money. It is heating cheaper than any other option. 100 years from now, there's no such thing as like, I'm going to set up a Bitcoin mine because it's going to make me profit. I don't think so.
Tyler, welcome to Bitcoin Rails. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm excited to be here.
We've been talking about this interview for a while. This has been a long time coming.
We have indeed. I very much appreciate it.
Of course, of course. This is an exciting topic that I think is often overlooked by many, but it's starting to blow up.
It is.
It is, which is of course, Bitcoin mining heat reuse.
Yes.
You are, I think, pretty much sort of the leading thinker on this topic. You obviously wrote the book. This is the first time I've had this book in the shot of the podcast, Bitcoin Mining Heat Reuse by Tyler Stevens.
Yes.
And this topic is, it's pretty interesting. So heat reuse broadly, just to kind of give a little bit of an overview for people who are new, is essentially the use of heat that disseminates off of Bitcoin miners for actual functional purposes.
Correct.
Rather than assuming it's a waste product, which I think has historically been the case, right? I mean, most people see heat coming off of miners as a bug, not a feature.
Exactly.
And you're sort of challenging this. Yeah, so feel free.
Yeah, just high level. They're electric resistive heaters. So you flow electricity.
ASICs are.
Yeah, yes, the
Miners.
Bitcoin miner is. So you flow electricity through it, and all of that electricity has to turn into something. You can't really like delete energy. It has to go to something. And really it's just like friction happening at the circuit level, like when you rub your hands back and forth and they get warm. That's what's happening. So all of that power is getting turned into heat, which, as you said, has been a challenge to overcome when you're running a big mining operation. You got to keep the machines happy, keep them cool. But I came in with the perspective of seeing these things as useful electric heaters that happen to pay you in sats. So
useful electric heaters. Okay, so we'll get more granular into what that means. But I'm curious if you could just start by sharing a little bit about kind of how you got into this topic, why this topic matters to you.
Sure.
Share a little bit about your background, then we'll kind of get into the details.
So my background was in mechanical engineering. And so with a specific focus on thermal engineering, I happened to actually work, as I mentioned earlier, like a block from where we're recording at United Launch Alliance, which is an aerospace company. I was on their thermal engineering team. All the while,
sounds relevant. Thermal engineering,
picking out temperatures, heat rates, those cool like color gradient maps where it's like a thermal imaging camera, that kind of stuff. And then all the while, I started to get into Bitcoin, and then I think, which is natural for most people, maybe mining is one of the later things they learn about. And that happened to be the case for me as well. And so when I did start to take a look into mining, I was going to meetups. There were guys at the Denver Bit Devs or the Bitcoin and Beer that had these like little hacked together space heaters from an S9 and, some fans and a 3D printed case. And so I saw these home tinkerers turning them into space heaters. And then I had that thermal background where I knew the kind of the physics and the basic math that all that electricity happened to turn into heat. And so that really sparked my interest, just coming in first to the mining sector with this specific focus on heating. And for the better part of a year, I found everyone that I could online doing this kind of stuff on Twitter and set up calls with them, learned with them, chat with them at conferences, and then ultimately realized, wait a second, I have a lot of notes on this stuff. I might as well put it together in a book, and that's how we got to that.
And you wrote the book.
Yeah.
Wait, so just just to back up for a second. So you kind of thought of this as an idea because like a bunch of plebs that were home mining were literally using their miners to heat their homes?
Totally.
And when you say they were turning them into heaters, like were they retrofitting them in some way, or were they literally just like putting ASICs in their homes and like creating heat with it to warm their rooms?
So this is when I was more ignorant on the broader Bitcoin mining hardware and software space. It was all new to me, so I didn't really necessarily think so much, this is retrofitting, this is a product. I was just like, what is happening? But now that I look back on it with more insight, they were totally retrofitted machines, meaning it was at one point an industrial miner that was meant for your data center style operation. Air-cooled is typically the name of the game. And the retrofits would either solve for one of two things. It would solve for quietness, so they're too loud, right? Or with the more modern industrial machines, they run on 220 volt power, 240, 220. And so that's not a standard household outlet here in the United States. And so they would modify the power supply unit, which is called a Loki kit. So you can actually convert them to run off a standard 110. Usually you have to get rid of a hash board. This is all technical stuff, but you got to make them happy, like where they are quiet and they can run on your household outlet, not your dryer outlet in the house, because I'm sure we'll get into it, but Bitcoin mining has kind of matured into this more and more industrial industry where the machines aren't really happy to be run in a home setting.
No, but this is an important point because I remember I was trying to get like my dad, I was trying to like teach him how to plug in an ASIC. And it's like, oh no, you can't just put it in a regular plug. You need like special plugs to plug in ASICs. So like this was something that if we theoretically wanted to use ASICs for heating, then that's like one of the challenges to overcome.
For space heaters specifically. Like, I mean, if you have a bigger Bitcoin miner that's heating something in your utility closet, like a furnace or a water heater, you might have a big outlet in there. But just space heaters around the house, you got to make that change.
How do you solve the noise problem? Like, how do you make ASICs quiet?
You can do a couple of things. What the guys were doing is they would go to larger fans. So a larger fan can just push more air, which means it can spin slower. And the noise comes from it spinning really fast. So if you can make it bigger, it can spin slower and it'll be quieter. And there's just higher quality fans that are quieter. A company that's often used was Noctua. They make like these big computer case fans for all the gamers out there that make these big, beautiful like RGB gaming desktops that are nice and silent. So that's how the kits were done. And then 3D printing was a big part of that. So you could modify the form factor. So you could, make it wife approved. It's what the pubs would call it.
Wife approved. Yeah. It's got to be quiet to be wife approved.
Exactly. So that's what they would do to make that change.
So this was like a pleb movement initially. This was like plebs just being like, we want to figure out how to reuse heat. Who was in your opinion, like the early people doing this? Is there like a name that comes to mind of somebody who like initially thought about doing this?
Yes. So the first person that put together the documentation that I followed was Crypto Cloaks. So he makes a bunch of 3D printed cool things in the Bitcoin space, be it like a case for your hardware wallet to just little knickknacks that have Bitcoin bees on them, right? Coasters, things like that. And he ended up putting together design files for this really nice space heater enclosure for the Bitmain S9, which is an old Bitcoin miner that's a smaller form factor. And it actually has a model that runs off 120 volt power, meaning you can run it off a household outlet. So he put together this really cool documentation for like, here's where you buy the fans. This is what you need to modify like with the wire. And here's how you take it apart and then put it in this new case and screw it together. And it was a really helpful guide. That was probably my first investigation into how to like hack a machine myself. But in the same vein, I would say this was not like, I wasn't so early where this was the only thing happening. There were also companies like Heatbit already putting together more polished products. There were people heating their whole home. A friend of mine from Home Bitcoin Immersion Mining, Bob, he's got a really cool YouTube channel where he like runs these immersion tank in his house, and he tried everything from like heating his dryer to his furnace to radiators and his garage. I mean, it's crazy. I've been there.
And Heatbit. So like let's like just like position this in time and space. So like would you say Crypto Cloaks was like the first person to sort of
put together that guide? Yeah, that I saw. I could be missing some folks.
When was this? Like, how long have people been attempting to reuse heat from miners for like heating their homes, heating their water tanks, et cetera?
I would say the 2020 timeframe. I didn't get really into Bitcoin until end of 2021. So there were already people hacking and doing this before me. I just happened.
Oh, this has been going on a long time.
Yeah, a long time. But I think there was like this surgence in when it started to happen. This is before the BitAxe. And it was after Bitcoin miners, the hardware started to turn industrial, meaning there were no miners that you could buy online and run them in your house anymore. We were kind of in this limbo state where all the miners were starting to go toward this more industrial power. So you can't run them aside from your dryer outlet. And there were no really home miners on the market. Maybe the Heatbit Trio or Maxi wasn't out yet. And so in this sense, like if you wanted to mine at home, the BitAxe didn't exist. You had to hack something together. Everyone was a hacker. For a brief period. And now we're turning back to where there are home mining products from the likes of Canaan and Heatbit and others. And the BitAxe is obviously so popular. So that's exciting in that sense. But I think that's when you started to see a lot of the heating innovation was when it was like, this is literally the only way I can get a Bitcoin miner in my house is if I make it quiet and I make it run on this outlet, because all the other options are meant for the data centers.
Well, and also there's this, kind of other feature in addition to like making the outlets work and, making it quiet. It's also cheaper if you're reusing the energy. If you're reusing the heat, there's a clear economic incentive. I would imagine that's like the most important key element here. Or am I not thinking about that correctly?
I think the early guys were just like psycho Bitcoiners who would do it anyways, which is fine.
Like many home miners?
Yeah. I do believe that, but I do think we are starting to mature, like the Bitcoin heating. I call it hashrate heating. I at first called it Bitcoin mining heat reuse, but then I actually wish I renamed my book because I'm not happy with that name because it's not Bitcoin mining heat reuse. I'm not running a Bitcoin mine. I run a heater that gives me Bitcoin. So I call it like electric heating Bitcoin capturing. Like, you know what I mean? It's a little bit backwards. But anyways, what was I going with that?
Hashrate heating is a good name.
Heating. Oh, the economics. That's right. Now I think people are thinking more about the economics. And it's not to say we can get into it like, this is cheaper for everybody. It's highly specific on your electric rate, just like the larger miners have to investigate. But also now you're comparing to what your other heating option is. Maybe it's propane, natural gas. We're blessed to have really cheap natural gas here in America. Heating oil, diesel, kerosene, wood. I mean, there's so many options. So
we're going to get into kind of like all the different types of heat that people use around the world and sort of like how the economics of this like play out in a world where people are mining Bitcoin with for heat. But like just for clarity, assuming that you are in a jurisdiction where electricity is used for heat primarily, I think there's like a handful of places in the United States where that is the case. Assuming that's the case, it is essentially free to mine Bitcoin.
Yes.
If you are reusing for heat.
It costs the same as the $50 electric heater you could buy from Walmart, your space heater, or your little buddy heater, but you're getting sats. Now, not to say the machine costs the same, but it costs the same to run. Yeah.
How many people in the United States, or even maybe globally, already use electric for heat and could theoretically be mining Bitcoin for free if they were using miners for heat?
I don't know the number of people off the top of my head, but I have looked into this, and the electric resistive, that's what we call it because it's just like resistive elements. The electric resistive market for heating is something like 5 to 10 times larger, depending on your source, than all of Bitcoin mining combined.
So even if we just completely excluded like everyone who's using gas and propane, and some of those people even could potentially, could potentially move over to electric heating if the incentives, if the economics make sense. But like just excluding those folks.
I'll throw out some crazy numbers. So just electric resistive heating is probably 5 to 10 zettahash out there right now.
Which is like, how much is the entire Bitcoin network right now?
Yeah, like, what is it, 900 exahash?
So it's not even a zettahash.
No, I think it dipped below. There's another fun fact that I looked up, just water heaters in the US. Now, not all of them are electric. Some are other fuel sources. Just US water heaters is 5 zettahash. This is all going off like 25 joules per terahash, meaning average machine efficiency, not cutting edge, but average fleet efficiency. And then if you target all of what I call comfort heat, and comfort just means like it's for space and water heating, you're not like melting aluminum ore with this. It's not hot enough.
Which is a whole other potential heat demand source.
Totally. But just comfort heat, like keeping yourself cozy and having hot water, is like 200 plus times larger than all of Bitcoin mining. It's like 25% of the world's energy.
Okay, so I think I read in your book, tell me if I'm getting this right, that if 1% of all heat usage in the world was mining Bitcoin, right, was being,
comfort heat,
double sourced for just comfort heat.
Yeah, just space and water heating. If 1% of the world's comfort heat was hashing, you would double the network hash rate overnight.
Okay, so this potentially has some big like industrial implications, some big economic incentive implications that we're going to get into in a minute. But just to close the loop. So when did the consumer products, you mentioned Heatbits specifically, and I think one other, when did we start to see like production of like heaters that you can just plug into your home to mine Bitcoin? Like, when did that happen? When did we start to see like products being built around this?
I think the Heatbit Trio came out, I want to say, in 2022. Their initial product actually was a retrofitted industrial S9, and then they went a whole nother route, which we'll get into later, where they're actually designing from the hashboard level up. So they're using
like they're building their own.
Yeah.
Everything just with the chip.
Correct. So that I want to say was 2022. I might be off slightly, pushing before or after. And then the other company I mentioned is Canaan. So that's actually a really unique one too, because they make ASICs. Like they are an ASIC manufacturer. They design the chips.
Oh, interesting.
And they sell industrial shoebox
which is
miners.
rare. I mean,
they're the only ASIC manufacturer that is selling home miners from the factory.
What is it again? The company?
Canaan. They're small market cap. I want to say like around 5%, a Singapore company, but they, they have competitive joules per terahash efficient chips. They're good. And then they have these like baseboard heaters that are out, as well as one that looks like a desktop tower. They're already quiet. They run off 120 volt outlet, and they have good efficiency. They mine quite a bit of Bitcoin. So,
and all of these products right now are consumer retail focused products, like, hey, buy this, plug it into your wall and heat your cabin in New Hampshire kind of thing.
And they're all space heaters.
They're all space heaters.
And there's a reason for that.
Okay.
You can plug in your own space heater. Would you plug in your own furnace? Would you plug in your own pool heater? No one does that.
Right.
They call the pool heater guy.
Right.
They call the plumber, right? And so they're all these gadgets right now, the ones you can buy off the shelf. They're gadgets because people can plug in a gadget and download an app.
Plebs can just choose to use them.
But when it's an appliance, when it's infrastructure that goes in your utility closet or in your boiler room or in your basement, I mean, you don't typically say, hey, plumber, I want this exact model. You say, I need a new furnace, and, he gives you an option. So,
well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because perhaps that's sort of the next wave of this revolution. Is like, okay, so right now we're selling these products to consumers to plug in space heaters in their homes. But at what point do plumbers start to say, hey, I'm going to start, initiating, these, putting this infrastructure into people's homes, being like, hey, I'll give you a discount, on your service if you let me mine Bitcoin with this infrastructure.
I know. I had the same thoughts, and I also have been ignorant on the heating industry, and so it's funny to think about where Bitcoin has brought me. I'm like hanging out with plumbers and electricians.
We have to understand the heating industry now. This
seriously.
Is going to get way bigger than, if this is going to change the world, this is going to get way bigger than plebs plugging in space heaters.
Totally. But at the end of the day, you're selling to an industry that's like 100 years old plus. I mean, it hasn't seen. When's the last time we had a new heating technology? Like heat pumps, I guess.
You might say that it's similar to overriding the existing TradFi financial system.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's been around forever. There haven't been that many innovations in this space. It's very slow moving. There's a lot of regulations. There's certifications. There's trade schools. There's these crazy installer networks. There's manufacturers reps that will customize the equipment for whatever big commercial thing you need. And so it's been a lot to learn. And I think the answer is we just need to collaborate with the heating industry. So that's actually why I host the Heatpunk Summit, which is the event I'm hosting next week. It's like 2/3 of the attendees are these Bitcoin mining stack builders, be it the open source guys, the chip manufacturers, or the plebs just
home miners.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other third are contractors, home builders, architects, developers, home insurers, everything, inspectors, the whole stack.
How are you, so like in theory, you're having to educate these non-Bitcoiners who are in the heating industry about this.
Yeah.
How are you doing that? And who are you approaching first? Like, who are the low-hanging fruit folks to educate about this?
How I'm doing it is just bringing them together and putting them in a room for 2 days together.
Okay.
Like that's the conference.
Okay.
There's other ways as well. Like we have the Heatpunk movement. I guess I'll just define that first. Like the Hashrate Heatpunks is a community movement of Bitcoin mining and heating industry builders from those sectors that are working together to advance this Hashrate heating industry. And so that's really the mission. The goal is to bring Bitcoin mining back to homes and businesses, because it's very much not in homes and businesses. We're bringing them together with the summit. We have a technical forum where, a plumber can go on there and review someone's thread. It's literally like an old school forum, which I think is great. That's how you get the 60-year-old wrench turners to participate. And then we are, I think the next phase is probably more technical documentation and literature to get them to take it seriously. It's helpful to have the hardware demos like we'll have next week. These guys can just come see the hot tub. They can see the furnace. They can see the space heaters. They can touch it. They can feel it. They can talk with the manufacturers that perhaps might make these ASIC chips. But I think the next step that's necessary to get them to take it more seriously is like a white paper in the Hashrate journal. Hashrate stands for American Society of Heating, Refrigerants, and Air Conditioning Engineers. It's like a trade association. Every large company that makes a water heater or a space heater or, any heating company that has a fleet of plumbers and HVAC guys, anyone worth their salt would be a member of this trade association. They get a newsletter, they go to an annual conference. They're in the know about new regulations. You got to have, your furnace has to be 95% efficient next year, not 94, right? To burn less carbon or whatever the goal is. These trade associations exist to teach people about new technologies, help build out installer networks, the whole like. And so we need to penetrate that, I think.
So is that how the heating industry currently works? You have these sort of businesses that essentially there are several plumbers who work for these businesses. So if you can convince the CEO of this business that this is a good idea.
Yes. Yeah, that's where you asked. I need to answer that. Okay. I thought, because we'll get into the incentives, I thought you could just be like, hey, plumber, you can have 5% of the Bitcoin if you install this thing passively. And I'll set you up with an app, and I'll build a dashboard so you can see the hash rate and the chip temperature. And you should be able to predict, if this boiler is healthy, right? Because he's kind of like the remote Bitcoin mining operator.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. And the incentive is he gets some passive income instead of, getting a call that whatever's broken and he'll charge the customer $500. I haven't found success with that. I think we're a little early, actually pretty early, in the sense that the products suck and the software sucks. All the Bitcoin mining heaters.
We have a UX problem to get all the plumbers pushing Bitcoin miners.
But then maybe I just haven't found good subcontractors. They haven't really expressed interest in something new. They know their ways. Where I have found success as of lately is actually going a more top-down approach with home builders, architects, developers. And then it's kind of great because it's it doesn't matter what the plumber thinks. They're being told to do it.
Interesting. So basically you convince an architect to basically convince their client, I assume.
The client, yeah. So the homeowner, the building owner, the developer, whoever's going to pay for a commercial building, the project lead, and then their team that manages everyone in the stack. On the commercial side, you have an architect, you have what's called an MEP team, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. They're putting together all the engineering drawings. They're the ones that submit it to the city for approval, right? You got to get in at that phase there. On the residential side, here in the States, we have a pretty free system. It's different in Europe, I've found, but you can do whatever you want in your house, really. And so I found success with the home builders and the project managers in that sense, not specifically just a small plumber that, services a neighborhood in a small town and does it. I do think that'll eventually come about because of the incentive structure. I think the UX needs to improve first.
What's the incentive for the architect or the property manager to be pushing this to their clients, right? I mean, they're not going to get Bitcoin mining rewards on the back end.
It's something new.
Just a cool thing to tell their clients about, basically.
And that's, I think, largely in part to how I frame hash rate heating. I frame it, depends on who you're talking to. You can frame it as to the psycho Bitcoiners like me. You want to mine Bitcoin at home, right? And they're like, I'm sold.
They're already
sold. I don't care
sold.
if it's twice as much money. I'll do it. Then there's the tech people who say, this is smart heat, right? It's really a heater that's connected to the internet and it makes money. That sounds pretty smart. In that sense, it's also like an IoT device, meaning, these are the people with solar, home batteries. They can control every light and blind in their house from their phone. They're measuring how much carbon they're reducing, emitting into the atmosphere because they've already got an electric stove and they already got an electric water heater.
These are sophisticated homeowners, basically.
Right. Luxury homes, energy conscientious, right? And so that's that sect. And they're technology people. I don't think that sect will ever go away. Some of the heatpunks and the plebs are they only exist for so long. The biggest fish is the people that want to save money. I think that comes last, saving the money when the UX and the infrastructure of the heating industry network is solved. Right
the first people will be the tech-forward luxury home people. I mean, that just intuitively makes sense.
Oh, it always is.
Yeah. Well, and also, so it's interesting. So there's homeowners. That's sort of one potential user of this, but also commercial buildings, I would imagine, because that's a real financial incentive, right?
Big time.
If you tell, somebody who's building a giant commercial property, you're going to make this much money and essentially offset your electricity cost by this much, that's a pretty big incentive. I mean, do you think that the commercial real estate market is bigger than the consumer real estate market?
And I think commercial is probably more lucrative. They are larger, you have typically better financing. Like if you're going to, pay for the hardware of these machines
Meaning they can like actually put the money into getting these machines in their building. So there's CapEx involved. I mean, there's expenses
what we're
involved in
talking
setting
about
this
is
up.
like highly complex heaters that are very expensive compared to just burn fuel, like caveman style, right?
Right. Well, and this is why, like, to your point, like the save money people, the like, middle class folks are going to probably become after these guys, right?
Yeah, or you need to solve some crazy economic structure where like they get the heater for free and the sats go back to the company or something, which we could get into. But commercial, just to finish there, I do think it's more lucrative. I have been known to say I don't think it's as cool. I want Bitcoin mining to be in the home.
Right. We want the like the little guys to win here.
We do. But then the other thing, the last thing I'll say on commercial is they typically have what's called a higher duty cycle. So in traditional Bitcoin mining operations, the duty cycle is as close to 100%. You call it uptime, right? A mega miner calls this uptime. What's your uptime? 80, 90, 95%. The hosting companies really care about that, how long they're down. In the heating world, you call that duty cycle, which is how much do you need heat? Like how many minutes throughout the day are you calling for heat, right? It's not always. If it's sunny, maybe you're calling for more heat at night. And so you want a high duty cycle because that means the miners are running longer.
The financial incentive is bigger if the duty cycle is bigger.
It would make no sense to buy, a Bitcoin mining heating system that's 10 times the cost of an alternative if you live in Florida and you're going to use it a couple of days out of the year and it will never really do that work for you to pay itself off. You don't really get to experience it. And so
unless you're heating pools and hot tubs.
That's true.
And I have heard that Florida does use electricity for heat. They are one of those jurisdictions where electricity is mostly where the heat comes from. So Florida might be an exception, actually.
Yeah. And the commercial guys just tend to have higher duty cycles, specifically thinking not just in residential or multifamily homes or apartments, but I'm talking like heat is no longer part of their demand based on the weather. That's usually the driving factor is the weather. Is it cold, right?
Because
you want to stay warm.
But I mean, like versus like, everyone needs heat for water.
Correct.
Like why is heat for air? Why would that be like a bigger driver than people who need heat for water?
Well, everyone likes to have hot water. Yeah. The hot storage hot water tank is a unique one because I don't think people realize this. They store the hot water. It's what we call a closed loop. It's a closed system, meaning you heat up the 50-gallon tank and then you're done until you use the hot water.
Oh, the duty cycle is very low for water.
Very low. And
very low.
If I were to build a hot water heater that mines Bitcoin, you actually want a tiny Bitcoin miner. Because that means it can run more, it's cheaper, and it's going to like pay itself off better. You get a really high duty cycle out of it, right? But then the smaller it is, you get what's called a really bad recovery time. Meaning, if you use that full 50 gallons, you filled up a big bathtub, whatever, it would take forever for that tank to get back to its temperature.
And it takes time to heat with a tiny little miner.
The hot water heater is like a hard one to solve. Obviously, the best way to have a high duty cycle in Hashrate heating and Bitcoin mining heat reuse is to not be driven off the weather, to like use it in some business operation. Maybe you're a brewery or a whiskey distiller, or I know a friend up in Idaho who did like a semi-truck wash, and you want hot water out of the pressure washer to get all the grime and salt from the roads off the trucks. And so that's just like, it doesn't matter how cold it is, like they always want hot water every day.
Okay, so from a consumer perspective, it actually probably will be the places that are colder that are potentially better fits for this or better candidates for mining heat reuse. Maybe that means that we'll see more Bitcoin in colder climates. Who knows? More Bitcoin adoption in colder climates. That's kind of interesting.
Good point, because we had that cold front in the U.S. a couple weeks ago and Hashrate dipped. And like my view of the far future is you see hash rate spike where there's cold climates. And you kind of have this heat map of the world where wherever hash rate's online is where it's cold, which is fascinating to think about.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so that's sort of what potentially the consumer, homeowner, real estate opportunity could be. You also alluded to that like actual business, there are some business types that just need heat for their business purposes.
Yep.
So you said, what? So like food company, like
food grade, because that loops back to the comfort heat, meaning this is not used in an industrial setting where you're, doing manufacturing and you need something that's 300 degrees Fahrenheit, right? You can get kind of like 180 degrees Fahrenheit out of these things.
Okay, so 180. So and this is called ultra low grade heat? Is that
ultra low grade? Is what I would categorize as comfort heat, like hot tubs and below, like hot water, 110, 120 in your hot water tank. It's 70 in your house. That's comfort heat. And so Bitcoin miners are low grade coming out of them.
They only, basically you can only get to about 180 degrees
because you'll
with a miner.
Kill the miner if it's too hot.
If it's too hot, the miner dies. Okay. So if there's sort of, again, let's just like live in this universe where maybe there's demand for heat from businesses, putting comfort heat aside.
Sure.
It would need to be the type of business that doesn't need heat above 180 degrees,
sure,
which is like a limited number of types of businesses.
But there's those examples out there that are like, that's all I use, and I use it every day, and it's like the largest line item on, what it costs me to run my business.
Why would a food company, so is that like for like dishwashing or something? Like why, like what are the types of businesses that need ultra low grade heat and why?
So there's that great example that Gladstein showed in his talk. That was one of the first things I learned about was like cocoa drying in Africa.
What is that?
Just drying cocoa leaves.
Oh, drying.
Yeah.
Oh.
So drying out.
That's niche.
Yeah, it is, but it's done
but
at
it's
an
example.
industrial scale. Yeah. Industrial scale, meaning, maybe this is like a couple hundred kilowatts to a megawatt.
I mean, there's quite a bit of demand for cocoa. Cocoa is like one of the most high demand agricultural products in the world.
So agriculture is a big one. Yeah. Food industry, low grade food processing, things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Low grade food processing. Those would be the big ones. Any other like examples come to mind of like businesses that need heat?
Preheating.
Preheating.
So this is where we can actually loop back into something that's more industrial when you look at it. District heating. We don't really have it so much in America. District heating is where you centralize the heat production, and it's like a utility. You know how you don't make electricity at your house, it comes from the grid, or you don't make the natural gas, it comes over a pipeline. Well, in Europe, Finland's really big into this. They have centralized co-located heat production, and one of the pipes that comes to your house from the grid is heat. It's a utility. Heat's a utility.
How do you transfer heat? Like, is it just like you're moving hot air through hot water?
Yep.
Okay, and this is what's happening in like mostly Scandinavia. This is happening, right?
Here in the U.S., what would have district heat is like a college campus or like a Disneyland resort, things like that, where they centralize into big boiler, utility area of the campus, and then they distribute it over a pipeline network to the buildings throughout. And in that sense, you can preheat the water with Bitcoin mining. So this is what Mera's doing in Finland, and they're heating like 60,000 homes with a Bitcoin mining operation. This is actually an example of why I separated Hashrate heating from Bitcoin mining heat reuse. District heating, I'd call it Bitcoin mining heat reuse. It's a full uptime Bitcoin mining operation, right? It literally looks like your data centers. You got your hydro miners, they're the 2U form factor. It looks like a mining op.
Right. Mera's just mining, and then essentially
they send the heat, and it's awesome. They get more profit.
Right. Like the government of Finland is essentially just buying that heat from Mera and using it to heat people's homes in Scandinavia.
Whereas Hashrate heating is I only turn on the miner when I want heat. So that's the test. Am I running the miner only when I want heat, or am I pulling the heat off from a mining operation?
It's interesting that you mentioned this particular operation that Mera executed. I actually spoke about this with Fred Thiel in my interview with Fred Thiel very briefly. But something that he pointed out is that it actually doesn't take that much hash to heat like all of Oslo, Norway, or whatever. It's a very small amount of hash. So I think, from their perspective, it's actually not a huge business opportunity for the big mega miners because it's too efficient. Yeah,
it's got to be like the miners in the middle, like the smaller guys, maybe the hosting companies. You're right. I've heard that as well. Well, that's just a testament to how freaking power dense these machines are.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize like your standard shoebox Bitcoin miner is like 5 horsepower. Like, it's crazy.
2 megawatts, like a small boutique miner in the United States could literally heat an entire city, basically.
Correct. Yeah, they're very power dense.
All right, guys, taking a quick moment to thank my new sponsors of the show. First off, the one and only Layer 2 Labs, pushing forward research and development of drive chains. Drive chains were first introduced as a soft fork proposal to Bitcoin, aka BIP 300, BIP 301. These BIPs essentially propose a bridging mechanism between Bitcoin and Layer 2s that are incentive aligned with miners, and they've gotten a ton of attention over the last couple of years. If you're curious about how drive chains could work in practice, though, check out layer2labs.com and download their alternative front end to Bitcoin Core. It lets you play with drive chains and see how they actually work in real life. I'd also like to introduce Hashrate, an alternative primitive to traditional L2s that allows users to execute a wide range of Bitcoin DeFi activities without having to trust a federated bridge. With Hashrate, Bitcoin is controlled by an MPC wallet that requires a quorum of proof-of-stake validators on the Sui network to execute Bitcoin transactions based on the validity of smart contracts. At least a third of the staking power of the Sui validators network is required to execute these MPC mint and redeem transactions, which is a substantive improvement in trust assumptions relative to other L2s or sidechain bridges. Hashrate's commercial team is also stacked, including a crew of former builders from the crypto division of Meta. I think we're going to see a suite of super competitive Bitcoin DeFi products built with this protocol, so definitely check out the Hashrate page on sui.io if you're curious. Last but not least, shout out to Bitbox. Bitbox is one of the easiest and most simple to use Bitcoin hardware wallets on the market right now. If you have friends or family members that you want to make sure stay safe and use cold storage, but maybe they're not the most Bitcoin native people in the world, I highly recommend checking out Bitbox. They're completely open source, no compromises on security, but they're also super easy to use, really intuitive UX. Plus, you can use them with concierge multi-sig services like Unchained, which I'm personally a big fan of. If you want to check out their hardware wallets, go to bitbox.swiss and use code BitcoinRails to get a discount. All right, back to the show.
Forest through the trees. Okay, so we have real estate. We have these sort of various types of commercial businesses that might have demand for heat that could be potentially mining Bitcoin, while they're doing whatever heat things they need to do. What do you see as other sort of like the big commercial impacts of this? Like if we adopt heat reuse as like a global standard activity, how does the world change? How does the heating industry change? How does the Bitcoin mining industry change? Maybe let's start with how the heating industry changes.
I think the heating industry changing is going to be harder than we think. I think the heating industry is I don't know if the industry's bullish, but they're being forced to be bullish on heat pumps. So heat pumps are powered by electricity. They actually don't make heat. They move heat. So it's like an air conditioner that runs in reverse. That compressor thing that sits outside on your back porch?
Mm-hmm.
It just runs that cycle in reverse, meaning if it's cold outside, there's still technically energy in the air. They pull that energy from the outside in, and they're very efficient. Long story short, you spend $1 with a heat pump, you get $3 worth of heat. So they're super efficient.
So are heat pumps an alternative to but they're electric now?
Yeah, but the electricity is not providing friction heat, that's making heat. The electricity is driving a pump, which is moving a refrigerant. It's a thermodynamic cycle. I won't get into it. Long story short, they pull heat in from the air. What does that mean? It means when it's really cold out, or the air is thin, or you're in high altitude, or it's dry, Colorado, where I live, they don't work very well. So their efficiency actually drops. And a lot of them have these backup resistive heaters. The reason I'm answering your question about what does the heating industry look like is on paper, when I say you spend $1, you get $3 worth of heat, that's 300% efficient. To the Department of Energy, to the American Society of Heating, Refrigerants, Air Conditioning Engineers, this is a huge way to reduce energy consumption. I think this is related to this anti-energy mindset, right?
Climate narrative.
Climate doomer, consuming energy is bad. And I think that we're going to have to come over that hump for Hashrate heating to be taken seriously at all, because in many, electric resistive heating in Switzerland, which is what a Bitcoin miner does, is illegal.
Wait, say that again?
Electric resistive heating is illegal in Switzerland. You have to use a heat pump.
Oh my God, because of the climate narrative.
Yeah, because it's 300% more efficient. But guess what? Running a computer is not illegal, which a Bitcoin miner is, so it's a loophole.
Okay, so maybe we'll have to get into the regulatory issues here at some point. Yeah. Okay, so just so I understand, so forest through the trees, how the heating industry works. So you have gas as an option, you have electricity as an option, electricity being the most natural fit here for obvious reasons. Yep. You have solar, renewables, etc. Are heat pumps another fourth category, essentially?
Heat pumps are the fastest growing heating method in the world.
And heat pumps are really not a fit for Bitcoin mining. Like, there's just not that much electricity being used.
No, I do think that's a good product idea to have a Bitcoin miner as the resistive backup in a heat pump. I think the challenge for changing the heating industry, why I answered your question that way, is like we have to get over this. But well, technically, heat pumps are 300% efficient mindset. Like that's literally everyone I talk to in the heating industry, they're like, well, technically, and it's so annoying because in practice, you talk to people with heat pumps, they hate them. They're super expensive. They're more they're more of a pain in the ass to repair because they have refrigerants and leaks and like they're more complicated systems. Now, not to say Bitcoin miner's not complicated, but yeah.
But to your point, even if they are 3x more efficient, it doesn't change the fact that you still have, let's say, like we reduce the, demand for electricity for heating down by, to a third. That's still an enormous amount of electricity that could be theoretically mining Bitcoin, no?
Totally. I actually created my own metric with my friend Cody to fight the heat pump nerds.
Okay.
And I call it, so in a heat pump, there's this thing called a coefficient of performance. And it means like you put $1 in, how many dollars of heat do you get back? So when I say you put $1 in, you get 3 back, that's a COP of 3, right? It's
okay.
300% efficient.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you, Isabel, me, I don't care what the physical efficiency of my machine is. I just care, like, is my heat cheaper?
Right.
Am I saving money?
Exactly.
And so in that sense, I created COPE, Coefficient of Performance Economic, or I call it COPE. And it means if I spend $3 on heat, right, with my Bitcoin heater, and I get $2 back in Bitcoin, then it's like I only spent $1 and my COP is 3.
Well, I was going to say, like, exactly. Like, in my opinion, like, ultimately, like, climate narrative or not, maybe it is, more important from a regulatory perspective, but from just like a purely economics perspective, if you combined heat pumps with Bitcoin mining, you're talking about reducing the cost of heat to like a sixth? Like,
well, no, because the electric, they run separately. A heat pump is either running as a heat pump or it's using its electric resistive backup inside of it. It's not both.
Oh, but you said that heat pumps do also need electricity to function, right? So again, there's just
to drive a pump,
right,
to make heat.
Right, but you could use that electricity to run the pump,
system.
Right? And it's just increased cost savings, I would imagine.
Maybe one day. I guess the heating industry, I don't mean to be like doomer about it, but I think it's going to be a larger challenge than we think. I think Bitcoin mining is so immature, it's going to take a while to be taken seriously.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is, well, let's think long term. Let's like imagine this universe, though, of like where this could go. Let's call it like in 30, 40 years.
In 30, 40 years, I think a vast majority of network hash rate will be passively. And what I mean by passively is not part of a Bitcoin mining operation. It's just a gadget or a product or an appliance or infrastructure in a building that has some guy that comes services it when he needs to. I think that will be the majority of hash rate. And the reason is, people have said Bitcoin mining is, hyper competitive. It's this apex predator. You always have to be getting more efficient, right? It's this carrot on the stick. You got to get the next machine. You got to get the cheaper energy. The bottom of that hill, where do you reach like the lowest energy state? The bottom of that hill is like hash price can be 0 and I will survive.
Right? Yeah, right.
I can make no money on the Bitcoin mining. And where does that make sense in electric heating? Because people are doing it anyways.
Who is benefiting from this? So is it, again, in this 30 to 40 year out timeline, is it still the homeowners who are benefiting from this? Or is it the heat companies who are benefiting from this? Like, who's actually getting the majority of that Bitcoin? Are there trickle down effects? So multiple people are benefiting? Like,
that's a really good question. We haven't been able to see all of these different economic models tested yet. Let's walk through a few. One of them is you buy an expensive heater, meaning you, the homeowner, spent more on purpose because you knew that you were going to get one that pays you back, right? And you hold that Bitcoin, you don't sell it maybe to subsidize, you can cash flow the electric bill or whatever, and that Bitcoin goes up in value. Okay, that's one model.
That's the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
that's the easiest conversion is just getting consumers to buy Bitcoin heaters. Let's call them Bitcoin heaters.
Bitcoin,
and hold the Bitcoin.
Or
sell it, whatever, but like, sure.
The next one is the passive revenue split, where some of the hash rate, some of the mining rewards go to the stakeholders that keep that system running. Like I said, the plumber or the HVAC guy, right?
Or the company that, is disseminating these plumbers and these HVAC guys.
Correct. Someone in that flow. And then another model would perhaps be the company that makes the product. They keep all the mining rewards.
That makes the machines that are mining Bitcoin and heating homes and buildings?
Maybe they just know that they're going to mine Bitcoin and they're going to make their profit on the machine 2 years into its life cycle, so they can undercut it, and it's 50% cheaper than anything else at Home Depot.
We'll give you your heater for free if you let us keep the mining rewards,
Which
essentially.
doesn't work with space heaters, and the reason is you can't guarantee someone's going to run a space heater. But guess what? Who's going to unplug their water heater? Who's going to unplug their furnace? Who's going to unplug their boiler? So you need to the right pieces have to be in play where you can make that bet as a company, I think. And I don't think we've seen that yet.
Is there a universe where the actual heating companies are making money off that? Like Con Edison, for instance, or one of these big producers of electric heat,
Yeah.
What's that universe? Or is there a universe where they're like, hey, we're the biggest fish in the room. We want a piece of this action.
Like a General Electric or someone that makes all this stuff. I think so. Yeah. And they'd be well suited to tackle that because they already have installer networks. They already have certified programs, become certified to install this Lennox air handling unit. An air handling unit's like the big box you see on the top of a commercial building, and it does the heat and air conditioning.
So there's a universe where General Electric could become the largest Bitcoin miner in the world.
Oh, easily.
These big heating companies could become the mega miners.
100%.
Okay, so that's actually a good segue. How does this affect mega miners? What is the impact of this? How does this change the existing mega miner universe?
Well, I think I'll flip that question back on you first before I expand, which is the mega miners seemingly have said they're too big to offload the heat. My point being is it sounds like the mega miner scale, it's so big, it's so remote typically to find cheap electricity. Where can you send the heat, right?
I think it's a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, again, for the mega miners, heat is, again, with the exception of district heating for the Mera example in Finland, it's a bug, not a feature. Heat is a bug, not a feature. Is there a universe where that changes for mega miners, or is this fundamentally a threat to mega miners?
I think it's fundamentally a threat to mega miners. I think really we can abstract the word heat, and what we're really describing is making Bitcoin mining useful. It's got some utility, it's a useful thing. I'm going to run it not just because of the Bitcoin mining.
Heat is a product, not a waste.
Yeah, and there's other useful ways to mine Bitcoin, meaning it could be demand response, grid balancing, right? That's a utility. Solar monetization. You could be dumping the heat, but just turning excess solar into money. That's, I even think national security is a utility. You could say one of the ways Bitcoin mining is useful is it fits the interests of our government. We're going to do it at a loss.
Sure.
So I think any mining operation at any scale that is not using Bitcoin miners for a utility function are screwed.
So, okay. So in this universe, basically, we have, all of these various players, whether they're commercial entities, businesses, home miners, people with real estate, whatever, who are mining Bitcoin. They're essentially now competitive to mega miners because they are effectively getting a hash rate price of 0 if they're using electricity for heat. Is that fair?
Yeah, and there's no ancillary costs. What is the marketing budget for my water heater? What is the, I don't care. I'm sure we'll get into the network security and hash price, and I had to leave all those Telegram mining group chats because I don't think about that stuff. It doesn't bother me at all.
For folks in places where, we are using gas, right, or non-electric heat sources, is the potential use of this sort of electricity for Bitcoin mining and getting those Bitcoin mining rewards change the fundamental economics of the heating industry, such that some people may actually move from gas to electric, or that they may change their heating power source so that they can mine the Bitcoin, because now with the Bitcoin subsidy, so continue.
I'll give you the answer, which is my perfect customer. It's in a cold climate. It's in a long heating season. So it's not just cold, but it's also cold for a large part of the year. That's that high duty.
New Hampshire, 8-month winters, whatever.
High duty cycle. Rural. And the reason rural is the answer is natural gas in America comes on pipelines. It's infrastructure like the grid. Okay. Natural gas is so cheap. It actually, if you convert it from $1 per energy basis to electric pricing, natural gas is like 2 cents a kilowatt hour. It is so cheap for heat. Whereas the electricity coming out of the outlet at my house is like 11 cents a kilowatt hour.
Right.
So it is 5 times cheaper natural gas to heat my home than electric resistive.
So are you saying that the Bitcoin mining rewards that people could use with electricity wouldn't probably be enough?
It wouldn't offset it, no.
It wouldn't.
You
So
can't
people
beat
will
natural gas.
So people will still probably use gas.
If you have solar and electric, and mining Bitcoin, you can kind of beat gas. But the reason I said rural is stored heating fuels, propane, diesel, kerosene, heating oil. These are like $3, $4, $5 a gallon, and they gyp you because it's stored in a big 500-gallon tank. And if you need it in the winter, they'll charge you double than if you fill up the tank in the summer. You got to shovel your driveway that could be 800 feet long in the mountains. And so these people that are in these rural pockets where there is no natural gas pipeline, they didn't drill any natural gas through the granite in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, you're saying in rural areas it's hard to get gas.
Yes,
so they don't have it. Okay.
So they have expensive giant tanks of stored liquid fuel. And it's expensive. It works out to, propane is like, when you convert it, like I said, from natural gas to that electric equivalent, it's like 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay.
So propane's 10, electricity's 11, Bitcoin is a 50% offset. Now my Bitcoin heating system is 50, 60, 70% cheaper than what I was doing.
Okay, so if you're using gas, you'll probably be the very last if you ever switch to Bitcoin mining. Like maybe that will never move over. It won't ever make financial sense. But if electricity is obvious and propane, like anyone who's using propane or,
heating oil it's bigger in the East Coast, like old America and Alaska as well.
What percentage of people are using propane, heating oil?
It's like 20-something%
Oh, it's a large amount.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a good thing just to cover. So we have the different types of heat that people are using. Let's just stick with the United States just as an example. Sure. You have electric, you have gas, you have propane, heating oil, and then you have renewables. Those would be the 4 categories.
Wood.
And wood.
Oh, yeah.
Where does wood fit into all of this?
I tried to go into this and I gave up because it depends on the species of wood.
Wait, there's not a standard species of wood that people are. What's the cheapest option?
Densities, and then the price is really arbitrary because a lot of the people heating on wood are literally chopping their own wood. So you're not going. It's not. That's free, effectively. What you're offering them with a Bitcoin heating system or any other, for that fact, is hey, do you want to stop wasting time chopping wood?
Well, and I imagine that's not a dominant use case in the United States, but maybe in, other parts of the world that are, slightly less commercially developed or whatever.
No, it's common up in the Rocky Mountains.
To chop your own wood for your heat?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. What percentage of people in the United States do you think are chopping their own wood for their heat?
Man, I don't know. At least
1%?
At least 1%.
At least 1%. Okay, so those people are already getting free energy. They might be the last to go then.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Okay, so...
And natural gas is at the bottom of that list. In terms of who's best set up to benefit from this, if you're already on electric heat, it's the same cost, you just get Bitcoin. And then it's propane and heating oil. And then natural gas, and then wood maybe is above natural gas, but we don't really think about them.
Okay, so what are the benefits of all of this to Bitcoin, the network, right? Let's just talk a minute about the security budget, right? I think that this is, in my opinion, something that people don't talk enough about, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have this, halvening that's happening every 4 years, unless the price of Bitcoin doubles every 4 years to meet that. Ostensibly, we're going to see a drop in hash rate.
Yeah.
Do you think that this fundamentally changes the economics of the Bitcoin security budget over time?
I think it solves the Bitcoin security budget.
It solves it fundamentally.
Single-handedly solves it, because if hash rate is integrated into utilitarian functions like monetizing excess solar or offsetting heating costs passively, and it's done in a sophisticated way where the hardware and the software is all seamless, then the majority of Bitcoin mining should not have to be thought about. You shouldn't have to have an operation. I think homes and businesses and commercial operations will just mine Bitcoin. I think a large percentage of Bitcoin mining far out into the future, people won't even know they're mining Bitcoin in their building. Most Bitcoin mining sites will be unknown.
Oh my gosh.
Which is crazy. And I think it also hyper decentralizes the network, which is another good effect.
Let's talk about that, because I have a little bit of a challenge to that. Okay, so why does this hyper decentralize the network? Because I kind of get what you're saying. Okay, we're going to have so much more hash online if people can effectively mine for free, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like effectively, that's what we're talking about is if you are like perfectly heat reusing electricity that you're already
There's a
burning,
sunk cost anyways.
it's free Bitcoin mining, hash rate goes like off the charts, the security budget, to your point, is solved. But we still have like, people are still going to mine to pools, for instance. Like we're still going to have miner centralization. Like what is your argument for this really, truly decentralizing the network and solving the centralization
issue? It's a good
issue?
question because what I'm describing is smaller mining operations, meaning they're not all going to be like Mara that can solo mine, right? And so pools will have to be used. I guess it solves, not that it's been an issue, but it does hyper decentralize at the physical level. I know that's not the larger threat. The larger threat is the digital centralization and the pool debate. It's a good point because the pools, like there's like a sweet spot size for a pool to get your consistent payouts, right? So there really isn't room for a million different pools, to forecast that out. So I think that hash rate heating, I think we're going to just get more transparent pools. I view it as a problem that's solved outside of hash rate heating.
Like with the pool centralization problem we'll deal with like Stratum v2 or like some other technical solution. But fundamentally, at least we have a security budget.
Yes.
At least we've solved that's like really the key thing is we've solved the security budget problem with this heat reuse situation. But we still need to solve the pool problem.
Yeah. Stratum v2, open source things like HydroPool, share accounting, from Ocean Pool. Like I think all of these efforts are happening in tandem, and it's our duty as the people really, carrying the torch for using Bitcoin miners in these weird new ways to take advantage and work alongside those other developments in the pool and the technical side of those aspects to ensure that, these are the most, this is exactly why. If we don't do that, GE will just become Bitmain.
Wait. Back up. Say that again.
The largest Bitcoin miner on Earth could be General Electric in their heating systems.
Totally.
Right? And so if we don't remain true to like the don't trust, verify, open source nature of Bitcoin, then we'll get into this, I'm sure, like all the constraints and concerns and pushback and this antagonistic relationship that we have with the current hardware and software manufacturers, firmware, hardware,
right?
Like Bitmain,
right?
GE could just do that.
But to your point, GE could in this universe be powerful enough that they could be the majority of hash rate easily in this universe. Yeah. Which, and they would not need a pool, right? Like that is a centralized force. Is there a potential threat that GE comes in and becomes, takes over 70% of the network hash rate?
Depends on how good I educate the heating industry. I don't know.
But like, you know what I mean?
Thought experiment.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll have to think on that.
We're jamming. I'm glad that we're jamming. Okay. So, but that's just like something to think about. There is a universe where like the heating companies become, so big that it's like, okay, GE is the new potential centralizing force in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? You look like you're deep in thought.
I'm going to take that thought home with me.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad I inspired some homework.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put that to the side for the second. What do you think are potential blocks to this revolution happening? You kind of mentioned education. Unsurprisingly being like the main issue, right? We need to like turn all of these like heating companies who don't care about Bitcoin, don't know anything about Bitcoin, and kind of get them to care. Any other like major blocks outside of education that you think could like stop this revolution?
I categorize it in two camps. There's the people problem. That's like the education.
Okay.
We got to figure out how to get these guys up to speed, trade schools, the whole likes, that stack. Then there's the technical challenges. And the technical challenges I alluded to earlier by saying all the hardware and software sucks. At the end of the day, hash rate heating, Bitcoin mining, heat reuse, we are taking a very immature industry with hardware that was meant for a data center, a large mega mining operation, and trying to use it in a different use case. And let me give a little details there. Like, I don't care about hash rate. My optimization is not for 24/7 uptime, right? High duty cycle. My optimization is I want this thing to be okay and survive if I turn it on and off 10 times a day. Is that bad for the machine? I would like to be able to say, it's 55 degrees out, not 40. Dial back the wattage 20%, right? And I want to control that, and I want it to happen quick. But I also don't want it to retune for 40 minutes and lose hash rate. All these things what if the internet goes out? I don't want my heater to not work, right? All these things I'm pointing to are these unique little barriers that us heatpunks have run into, because at the end of the day, the hardware and software from Bitmain, MicroBT, Canaan, all these companies is not intended for this use case.
So the way that we functionally design these machines, and therefore the way that we design Bitcoin miners structurally, will like really need to functionally change. I mean, like we'll need to like rethink about how we're building Bitcoin mining machines
And
at a very fundamental level.
yes, however, I don't think these companies making Bitcoin miners should be tasked with solving that problem. Why should a Chinese company be tasked with designing water heaters for the US market? They know nothing about it. Also, no one would ever buy that. No one will ever buy a Chinese water heater ever in the United States. No one will do that.
Okay, so who's going to make these machines? Like, who is going to be in charge of this?
My point being is the ASIC manufacturers need to sell the chips, just like Intel sells chips. Intel doesn't make laptops. Dell does.
Let's back this up for the folks who are new to the conversation. All right. So basically, we're in a position right now where you said, like, Bitmain is not going to be making water heaters for American citizens. No. We need probably American companies ostensibly to be
brand
like
reputation.
Actually building these machines in a way that works so that they're functional for heat reuse.
Correct.
Right now, why is that a problem? Or why is that challenging?
The entire Bitcoin mining hardware and software stack is closed source and controlled in a monopolistic regime by Bitmain with 80% market share. They've been caught before, with their hand in the cookie jar, thinking back to Antbleed. I think you talked about this with Scott, like a remote kill switch in the firmware. Firmware's closed source. You can't verify anything. ASIC boost. So they were kind of selling the machines with more horsepower at their end in the factory before they go out into the public. So theirs were better than everyone else's. Technically, like the firmware's not open source. You can't even verify that they're not skimming off the top. Scott had an amazing slide in his Plan B presentation in El Salvador that over the past 10 years, only 6 blocks mined by bitaxes are truly like verifiable.
So I mean, basically making these machines, getting these machines made is like borderline impossible. I mean, like it is incredibly difficult to literally just get chips.
They're desoldering chips.
They're out of existing ASICs that they buy from China.
That's not a scalable path forward for manufacturing for any company.
Right. Yeah. Although Heatbit says that they've got this down pat.
Yeah, sure. But I'm sure they'd save a lot of time and money if the chips just showed up on a reel.
Of course.
With documentation. So the answer is we need an open source mining stack. I'm wearing my Telehash hat. This kind of alludes to the 256 Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that is building the open source mining stack, these 4 pillars. It's a hash board called Ember1, a firmware called Mujina, a control board called the Libra board, and a one-click deploy mining pool called Hydra Pool with different payout structures.
So I'm going to link to my episode with Scott because it's incredibly, I think, important.
Very related, yeah.
Very helpful context for this conversation. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, you would argue that like one of the biggest blocks to this sort of heat use revolution that in theory could solve Bitcoin's security budget is that at the moment, it's like impossible to get these machines. It's very, very challenging and difficult to get these kinds of machines made at scale, and unlikely that the folks who are essentially monopolizing the manufacturing of Bitcoin miners right now are going to start getting into the American heating industry.
Exactly. And I would view like the Open Source Miners United and the guys with the bit axes and doing all that tinkering, the electrical engineering, the embedded systems guys, they're building these little desktop toys. They're cool. I have a couple of them. I would say that's like the opening of the floodgate for the education and how to handle these things and how to build and develop in Bitcoin mining. But then the Hashrate Heatpunk, I view it kind of as like the useful application layer of that. Like, where does that scale, right? And so the people that run a bitaxe at home, they think it's cool. It's like 15 watts. It puts off as much heat as your iPhone charger. Like, it's not a lot of heat. But a lot of those people get hungry for more. I want more Bitcoin mining at home. Like, what is the maximum amount of Bitcoin mining you should use at home? Probably as much heat as you need, because that's like as useful as it can be. But I'll just finish by saying, like, this open source stack doesn't just unlock the Heatpunk movement. It also unlocks, the guys like Gridless in Africa doing off-grid mining or direct DC solar mining. Because at the end of the day, like, we're talking about energy systems. Heat is energy, right? I only want heat in that energy sometimes. If you are monetizing solar, you only want the miner to run according to the like curve of the sun, the solar flux on your panels. And so really just having an open source stack to build upon, it's going to flourish Hashrate heating, solar monetization. I also think, I want to hammer this home, I also think it'll help the mega miners.
Explain that.
I think it's absolutely...
You mean open source will help the mega
Yes,
miners?
yeah, I think it's absolutely...
I think Fred Thiel would agree with you, actually.
I think it's absolutely preposterous for a publicly traded company to say, yeah, we have no idea how the firmware works.
Right. I mean,
I don't know if Bitmain's
and the mega
taking
miners
10% of
the mega miners, including Mara, are developing their own firmware. But it's a challenging, right? But it's a challenging thing when all of the machines are sort of designed to run this very specific firmware created by Bitmain.
It's literally financial and security, operational security advice to like make your own firmware.
I will say, when I interviewed Scott, I got pilled on sort of Bitmain in general as essentially like the biggest, most kind of critical single point of failure in the entire sort of Bitcoin stack.
I view it as a bigger risk than the mining pool centralization. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, they literally are controlling the production. You have like essentially one company coming out of one country.
And it's this perfect storm too, because Bitcoin mining has become so industrialized, no one thinks about it. Because no one can do it at home. It's gotten so out of hand. It's like in the ether. No one even, you talk to a new Bitcoiner, they're like, what am I going to do? Sign up for a hosting company? I have friends at hosting companies. I think hosting companies are silly. It's like, yeah, Bitcoin mining sucks. You can't do it at home. We'll run it for you.
I mean, it's sad, really. Like that's what it is. It makes sense that they exist, but it's sad.
It is sad.
It's sad that
there's no options for you. We'll just run it for you, and we'll send you your sats in the mail. Don't complain.
That's actually a really good question, is how does this affect hosting companies? Like, if everyone's able to basically mine for free in their homes for heat reuse, do the hosting companies go out of business?
100%.
100%.
In my opinion, maybe I'm wrong. I think Bitcoin mining is going to like settle down into the cracks of these utility applications where it's doing something at an energy level. It is helping balance the grid. It is turning excess solar into money. It is heating cheaper than any other option. There's no such thing as like 100 years from now, there's no such thing as like, I'm going to set up a Bitcoin mine because it's going to make me profit.
Right.
I don't think so.
Mining alone will cease to be profitable unless you are mining as sort of like in conjunction with some other utility. It's just not going to make economic sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Because these utilities will be done anyways. And if you can stack some sats along the way,
great.
Why would you not do that?
Right. Then why not just take the subsidy?
Yeah.
Last question for you. How do you think the open source mining revolution is coming along? Like, do you think that we're making substantive progress in fixing this sort of Bitmain centralization issue that we're facing?
100%. I think we're in this awkward limbo phase right now where the miners are getting more industrial. Like, I had a tweet about this the other week. MicroBT just announced their new 70 series. 10 of the 14 miners they announced are 3-phase power, 480 volt. Without getting too much into a tangent, that isn't even a dryer outlet. That's like straight up industrial. My point being is these companies are shifting more and more towards miners that will never, you can't even retrofit these. These will never end up in your house, ever.
Okay.
And so they're so industrial. There's more reason than ever to build the open source stack so we can manifest Bitcoin mining into all these different form factors and use cases.
Oh, you're saying the demand for non-industrial miners that can be used for things like heat reuse will drive the open source mining movement?
I think so. Because there's a hunger to mine back in homes and businesses in these unique use cases that are not as large and on grid. And the progress is astounding. So just last year, I'm wearing my Telehash hat. The 256 Foundation ran a fundraiser, a one-day live stream where people pointed their hash rate to a solo mining instance.
I saw this.
And there was, I think, 1 exahash at one point last year. And
you guys hit a block, right?
Hit a block.
Yeah, you hit a block.
Yes, the 256 Foundation hit a block. We've
Shout out to Odell, right? And who else is involved in the 256 Foundation?
It was started by Rod Rudy of Bitcoin Park.
That's right. I was confused.
Econo Alchemist.
Right, there you go.
And Rod actually just stepped down from the board, and Scott and I have joined.
Okay.
And we have, so Eco's the project manager, and there's 4 main projects, as I said. Junglee's working on the mining pool called Hydropool. Scott is working on the Ember One hashboard. Schnitzel is working on the control board, Libra board. And then Ryan is working on Mujina firmware. And so since that year of hitting the block, all of these projects have public repos on GitHub. You can build them. We put together a system, a reference design last month in Nashville, and we were mining on a fully open source mining stack, control board, hashboard, firmware to an open source pool. So it works, and the building blocks are there. Caveat being chip access.
Well, and this actually just takes me to my question that I was going to ask you, which is, do you think folks like Jack Dorsey and people who are sort of pushing for an American chip, right, or sort of even an open source chip, how far along in that process do you think? Scott was very bearish on this. He was very I think it's going to be a very long time before we see open source chips.
Move slow, for sure. And that's been something I've learned over the past year. If you asked me a year ago, I would have been more giddy about it. And they're also addressing the larger clients first. So they're going to sell to CleanSpark.
The mega miners.
Yeah. Because that's where they're going to make their money. They have their orders, right? And so, Proto is an awesome effort. They've committed to, selling the chips directly and a whole stack of supporting features, firmware, monitoring and control software. I'm really excited about that. I think it will take some time. I don't actually think we'll ever have an open source ASIC chip that is competitive. Scott and I have talked about this a lot. It's also meaningless in the sense that, this is where we get into game theory of other bottlenecks. You need $100 million to ask to get in line at TSMC, so it doesn't even matter.
Does an open source chip even matter? No. But certainly competition for chip making would make, it's maybe not open source that really is the meaningful difference, but the idea that there are competitors for these chips rather than a Taiwan monopoly.
And I think that right now, we're working hard, Scott, the likes of those guys, myself, to convince these ASIC manufacturers there is literally more money to be made in just selling chips. I get it. They're nervous about it because the water heating company doesn't exist yet, right? And the solar company that's going to use hashboards that they make doesn't exist yet. So this is my pitch. If you're an underdog, if you're not Bitmain or MicroBT, you should sell your chips because you have nothing to lose. You're already a tiny percent of the market share. You're already 5% or less, right? And so sell the chips, wait the time. We're in a little limbo period. New companies will come about that are going to use this technology and make exciting new miners.
It's a little bit of the chicken or the egg, right? Because it's at some point, it's going to become obvious to the chip manufacturers, GE could become our biggest new customer. But in order for that to happen, you need to have demand for heat reuse. And if there's no products to build that demand with.
It's exactly how it feels. It's very frustrating. Fist in the air.
Okay, well, hopefully this interview helps push the cause along. Thank you so much for coming, Tyler. This was super awesome. Great chat. So thank you.
Thanks, Isabel.